You have eaten this fruit 1,000 times. You have almost certainly never seen it. Picture something the size and shape of a small rugby ball, deeply ridged down its length, thick and leathery, in a color that does not look like it belongs on a plant. Bright yellow, deep orange, blood red, or a purple so dark it reads as black. And it is not hanging from a branch, where fruit is supposed to hang. It is growing directly out of the trunk of the tree, stuck to the bark like something that landed there. That is a cacao pod. And every piece of chocolate you have ever eaten came out of one. Now here is the part that almost nobody knows, and it is the reason for this video. Cut that pod open, pull out one of the 40 or 50 seeds inside, wipe off the white pulp, and put it in your mouth. And it does not taste like chocolate. Not a rougher chocolate, not a more bitter chocolate. Nothing like chocolate at all. Flat, harshly astringent, and bitter in a way that makes you want to spit it out immediately, which is exactly what the tree intended. And here is the strange part. That flavor is not hiding in there, waiting for you to roast it out. It genuinely does not exist yet. The taste of chocolate is not a property of this plant. It is manufactured after the harvest by microorganisms in a pile of rotting fruit pulp over about a week. And for it to happen at all, the seed has to die first. That is the sentence to hold on to. Chocolate requires the death of the seed, and there is no way around it. By the end of this video, you will know what this fruit actually is, why the tree that makes it is one of the most impractical plants on Earth, what really happens in that week of rot, and why 2/3 of the flavor in a good bar was decided on a farm months before a chocolate maker ever touched it. But first, you need to understand what you are actually eating, because it is not what you think. Here is the idea that reorganizes everything, and it is simpler than it sounds. Chocolate is a seed, not a fruit, not a bean in the way a coffee bean or a green bean is a bean. A seed. The actual reproductive package of a tree, the thing it built to make another tree. And once you see that, one strange fact follows immediately. No plant on Earth wants its seed eaten. A seed is not an offer. A seed is the whole investment. So plants that want animals to help them wrap that seed in something delicious, the fruit, and then make the seed itself as unappetizing as possible. The deal is, take the sweet part, carry it away, and drop the part I actually care about somewhere new. Cacao plays that game harder than almost anything. The white pulp inside the pod is sweet and tangy and genuinely delicious. And the seeds sitting in it are loaded with alkaloids, theobromine and caffeine among them, precisely so that a monkey or a bird will eat the flesh and spit the seed out. So sit with what that means. For millions of years, that bitterness was a warning label. It was the tree saying, not this part is not for you. And we found a way to eat the warning label anyway. Everything else in this video is the story of how. And do me a favor, drop a comment and tell me whether you have ever actually held a cacao pod or tasted that pulp. I am curious how many of you have, because I suspect it is very few. Now, the tree itself, which is one of the least practical living things I have ever read about. Theobroma cacao. The name translates as food of the gods, which is generous, because as a piece of engineering, this tree is close to a disaster. Start with where the flowers grow, not out at the tips of the branches, where a flower normally goes. They erupt straight out of the trunk and the oldest, thickest limbs, in little clusters stuck to the bark. Botanists call it cauliflory, stem flowering, and it is rare enough that seeing it in person is genuinely disorienting. And there is a hard practical reason for it. A ripe cacao pod can weigh up to half a kilo, a pound or more, and a tree carries dozens of them. Hang that off a normal branch, and the branch snaps. So the tree grows its fruit on its own structural timber, because that is the only part of it strong enough to hold the crop. Now the flowers themselves, and this is where it gets almost comic. They are tiny, about the size of a fingernail. They produce essentially no scent. Their internal structure is so awkwardly built that honeybees cannot work them at all. The only creatures that can pollinate a cacao flower are minuscule flies, midges of the genus Forcipomaia, which live in damp leaf litter on a rainforest floor. Each flower is only receptive for a matter of hours, and most cacao trees cannot fertilize themselves, so the pollen has to arrive from a different tree entirely. Add all of that up, and the result is what you would expect. In the wild, fewer than 1 in 10 of those flowers ever becomes a fruit. A tree can be covered in blossom and set almost nothing. Then, if a flower does get lucky, the pod takes 5 to 6 months to develop and ripen. And here is the final absurdity. The tree has no way to release its own seeds. The pod does not split. It does not fall and burst. It simply hangs there on the trunk until something with hands or teeth cuts it open, or until it rots where it hangs. This is a plant that cannot reproduce without help, cannot pollinate itself, cannot open its own fruit, and grows only in a narrow band within about 20 degrees of the equator. It did not survive by being efficient. It survived by being delicious. So, crack one open. Under that thick, leathery rind, there is no juicy flesh the way there is in a melon. There is a packed column of seeds, 40 or 50 of them, each one wrapped in a slick white pulp, the whole thing looking a little like something you would find inside a sea creature. That white pulp is the actual fruit. And it is superb. It is sweet and sharply tangy at once, slippery, floral, and people reach for the same comparisons every time they try to describe it. Lychee, mango, pineapple, fresh citrus. It tastes nothing whatsoever like chocolate, and if you handed it to someone blind, chocolate is the last thing they would guess. And here is a thought worth sitting with. The best guess of the people who study this is that the pulp, not the seed, is what first drew humans to this tree. We probably did not domesticate cacao for chocolate at all. We domesticated it for the fruit, the way you would any other sweet tropical thing, and the seeds were the annoying part in the middle that you spat out, because that is exactly what they are built to be. The tree loaded those seeds with theobromine and caffeine and a wall of tannins, and the effect on an animal is immediate and unambiguous. Monkeys, rodents, and birds tear the pods open, strip out that sweet pulp, and drop the seeds, which is precisely the arrangement the tree wanted. Payment for delivery. And now the irony that runs through this entire story. On cacao farms today, that magnificent pulp is mostly not the product. During fermentation, it liquefies and drains off the pile as what growers call sweatings, and it runs away into the ground. The beans come out of the process having lost around half their original weight, and almost all of that loss is the fruit. So we found this tree, fell in love with the sweet part, and eventually built a global industry out of the part it was trying to make us throw away, while pouring the part it was offering us onto the dirt. But before any of that could happen, somebody had to solve a problem. Because the seed, on its own, is inedible. Here is where almost everyone's mental model of chocolate turns out to be wrong, including mine, until I went looking. Ask most people how you get chocolate out of a cacao seed, and they will say you roast it. Roasting is the step everybody has heard of. It is the one that smells like chocolate, the one with a temperature and a timer, the one that feels like the moment the magic happens. So here is the fact that breaks that. Take a fresh cacao seed straight out of a pod, dry it, and roast it perfectly, and it still does not taste like chocolate. It comes out flat, harshly astringent, and bitter. And this is not a matter of technique or of the roaster having a bad day. It holds regardless of how skillfully it is roasted, and it holds regardless of the genetics. You can take the rarest, most prized criollo cacao on earth, the stuff that sells for a fortune, and if you skip one step, it tastes like nothing anybody would pay for. I know that sounds like an exaggeration. It is not. It is the reason the whole industry is built the way it is. Because roasting does not create chocolate flavor. Roasting can only develop what is already there. It is a chemical reaction that needs specific raw materials, particular amino acids and sugars, and in a fresh cacao seed, those raw materials have not been made yet, and you can actually see this with your own eyes. Slice a properly processed bean in half, and the inside is brown, cracked, and open-textured. Slice an unprocessed one, and it is dense and deep purple. Chocolate makers use exactly this as a quality test, and purple is the color of failure. Purple means the flavor was never built. So the roast is not the moment of transformation. The roast is the last step in a process that already decided almost everything. The real transformation happens earlier, and it happens somewhere nobody thinks to look. In a wooden box on a farm, full of rotting fruit. Quick one, because the surprise in this story has a very particular shape, and I have run into that exact shape only once before in the garden. The shape is this. You are told that one thing causes another. Roasting makes the chocolate flavor. Everybody knows it. And it is not true, and because everybody believes it, almost nobody goes looking for what actually does the work. There is one plant where the identical thing has happened, and it is probably the most repeated piece of garden folklore in the world. The hydrangea and the soil pH. Change your pH, change your flower color. You have heard it. Your neighbor has heard it. It is in half the gardening books ever printed, and it is not the mechanism. People spend entire seasons pouring things into the ground, chasing a cause that is not the cause, and getting nothing. So I wrote the honest version down. It is called the Hydrangea Mastery Guide. All 6 types, told apart in 90 seconds, because every hydrangea mistake there is starts with not knowing which one you own. The prune by type calendar, so you stop cutting off your own flowers. The real reason the color changes, which is not the pH, whatever you were told. And the 5 myths that waste an entire season. 29 pages, $27. Instant PDF, 7-day money-back guarantee. And the link is in the description at waltgreer.com. And it ends the way this channel always ends. With the part, nobody selling you something will print. 4 of the 6 types cannot change color at all, no matter what you pour on them. Fertilizer will never fix a hydrangea that will not bloom, because a guide that only tells you what to do is only half a guide. Now, back to that wooden box full of rotting fruit. Because what happens in there over the next week is one of the strangest processes in all of food, and it starts with the seed being killed. Here is what actually happens on the farm, and the first thing to understand is how crude it looks. The pods are cut open by hand, and the wet mass of seeds and pulp is scooped out and dumped into wooden boxes, or piled into heaps on the ground and covered over with banana leaves. That is it. Nobody adds anything. Nobody introduces a culture. The microorganisms that do all of the work arrive on their own, off the pod surfaces, off the hands and machetes of the workers, off the leaves, off the wood of the boxes themselves, out of the air of that particular farm. And then, for somewhere between 2 and 7 days, it rots, deliberately. It happens in 3 acts, and each one hands off to the next. Act 1. The yeasts. That pulp is thick and dense and packed with sugar, and it seals the mass off from oxygen, which is exactly the environment yeast wants. So the yeasts move in and do what yeast has always done, converting those sugars into alcohol. For the first day or so, a pile of cacao is essentially brewing. Act 2. As the yeasts break the pulp down, it turns to liquid and drains away out of the pile, and air gets in for the first time. Lactic acid bacteria take their turn, souring the mass. Act 3, and this is the one that matters. Acetic acid bacteria arrive, and they take the alcohol the yeasts made and oxidize it into acetic acid. Vinegar. And that particular reaction throws off a great deal of heat. Inside that pile, the temperature climbs to somewhere between 45 and 52 degrees Celsius, which is over 120 Fahrenheit. A working fermentation is genuinely hot to the touch. Now, the moment everything turns on, that heat, together with the acid soaking inward, penetrates the seed, and it kills it. The embryo dies. Up until that point, the seed was a living thing, sealed and organized, with its enzymes kept carefully separated from the things they act on, because that is how a living seed keeps itself intact. Death breaks the walls. The cell membranes rupture, and everything that was kept apart is suddenly mixed together. Enzymes meet the proteins they were never allowed near. Those proteins are torn apart into free amino acids. Bitter tannins are oxidized and broken down, which is where a genuinely enormous amount of the astringency goes, by some measures, the great majority of it. And the inside of that seed turns from dense purple to cracked, open brown. None of that is chocolate yet. What it is the raw material. Those amino acids and sugars are precisely the ingredients that roasting will later combine into chocolate aroma, and without them, roasting has nothing to work with. The scale of it is worth stating plainly. More than 20 species of yeast and around 50 species of bacteria have been identified working in these piles. And people who study cacao flavor for a living estimate that roughly 2/3 of the flavor in a finished bar is already determined by the time that pile is finished, on a farm, months before a chocolate maker ever opens the sack. And nobody designed this. There is no inventor. Somewhere in the Amazon basin, thousands of years ago, someone left a pile of spat-out seeds sitting in their own pulp for a week, and came back to find that the inedible part had become something else. The tree grew the seed. The row made the chocolate. So the beans come out of that pile soaked, sour, and stinking of vinegar, and they have lost roughly half the weight they went in with because the fruit has drained away. Next, they are spread out in the sun, usually on raised platforms or patios, for about 5 to 7 days, and raked and turned by hand. This has to happen slowly. Dry them too fast and the acid gets trapped inside instead of evaporating off, and you end up with beans that taste harshly sour no matter what anybody does with them afterward. Dry them too slowly, and they mold. And only now, after all of that, do they get roasted. Roasting is where the aroma finally appears, and the chemistry is the same reaction that browns bread crust and sears a steak. Those free amino acids and sugars that fermentation built recombine under heat into hundreds of new volatile compounds. The figure people cite is over 600 potential aroma compounds in chocolate, which puts it in the same conversation as wine and coffee for sheer complexity. But notice what roasting is doing. It is assembling. It is not creating. Everything it works with was made by something else, a week earlier, by microbes, on a farm. Now the question some of you have been waiting for. Can you grow one? The tree, yes, with real limits. Cacao only fruits reliably within about 20 degrees of the equator, and it wants deep shade, constant humidity, and temperatures that never drop near freezing. Outside the tropics, it is a greenhouse or conservatory plant, and a demanding one. People do grow them in heated glass houses in cold countries, and they do sometimes fruit. You would likely have to hand pollinate, because your midges are not there. But here is the honest part, and it is the one nobody tells you. Even with a fruiting tree, you almost certainly cannot make chocolate from it. Fermentation needs mass. That heat comes from a substantial pile generating its own temperature, and a handful of seeds from 1 or 2 pods will never get hot enough to kill the embryos and start the reaction. Small batch experimenters run into this constantly. You can grow the tree. You can eat that extraordinary pulp. Making the chocolate takes a crop. Before we finish, send this to one person you know who eats chocolate every single day. Just the link. There is a very good chance they have never once seen the fruit it comes from, and have no idea that the flavor they love was built by microorganisms in a pile of rotting pulp on a farm they will never visit. Now, here is the whole thing, in one idea. Chocolate is not something a plant makes. It is something that happens to a seed after the plant is finished with it. That tree grew a fruit to bribe animals and made the seeds bitter on purpose so they would be spat out and carried away. We took the part it was defending, dumped it in a box, and let it rot for a week. Yeasts turned the fruit to alcohol. Bacteria turned the alcohol to vinegar. The pile heated up past 120 degrees, and the seed died. And in dying, it broke open its own chemistry and assembled the ingredients that fire would later turn into the most complex flavor in the human diet. Nobody invented that. Somebody found it, thousands of years ago, in a pile they had left too long. So the next time you snap a bar, remember what you are actually holding. A seed that was never meant for you, from a tree that cannot open its own fruit or pollinate its own flowers, made edible by an accident nobody planned and a partnership with organisms too small to see. Food of the Gods was not a bad name for it. So subscribe and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library. Real science, real sources, and we tell you straight, including when the step everybody talks about is not the step that matters. It is free, and it always will be. And drop a comment telling me whether you knew about the fermentation, because I suspect the split on this one will be dramatic. Next time, another everyday thing that is not made the way you were told it was made. I will see you in the next one.